present a panel of leading European AI practitioners from across the broader DN network. In the interest of time, I am not going to explain the DN house view on AI. Instead, let's hear directly from our panelists, and I'll try to ask some provocative questions. But if we could start, again, rather than me making introductions, let me ask each panelist to introduce themselves and say one way they have personally used AI within the last fortnight.
Okay, hi everyone, my name is Heiko. I'm the founder and CEO of Oxolo. We are working on our personal assistant or virtual employee. The main topic is talk to your data. And how do I use everyday AI? I use it every day, like, Perplexity for just, research stuff, using me, Jamie, as a note taker in every meeting I am. And of course, ChatGPT almost every day.
Hi, my name's Phil. I'm the founder and CEO of Cognigy, one of Europe's or maybe the world's leading companies in AI-powered customer service automation. So the question of how I've used AI, I guess, answers itself because I'm the CEO of Cognigy, so I use it all the time, as in using Cognigy. But personally, I'm also always keeping an eye on the market, and I've recently tried out Replit, for example, which is an AI-powered coding assistant, which was very eye-opening. So to anyone who hasn't tried it, Replit, quite amazing how it can actually build a prototype for you. We just did it the other day in the company. I think it took 3 minutes, and we had a working browser game with Pong that was multiplayer, that you can play even cross-browser and all that. So that was quite amazing.
Hello, there we go. First, the basics. My name is Itxaso. I'm the one with a complicated name. I am the head of AI GTM for Google Cloud for EMEA North, based out of Berlin. Previous to that, I was at AWS, also working with AI, managing the business for digital natives across half of EMEA and EMEA South. So I've been working with AI and AI customers and companies for a long time. The way that I used AI is actually last week with my nephew, and there's one new product called Imagen 3, where you can input text, and it creates any image that you describe, right? Which is absolutely fantastic for children if you want to create stories. So you can sing something a bit ludicrous, like, okay, I want to have a horse on a surfing board or table surfing a wave made out of Coca-Cola. Exactly what you get, right? So I think for imagination and for kids, it's absolutely fantastic as well.
Hi, my name is Yasmin. I'm the co-director and co-founder of the Responsible Technology Hub. Actually, we use a lot of AI, but we test more AI. So what does it exactly mean? We do a lot of impact assessments. We look at how AI impacts society or their users. And in that way, I've worked a lot with Microsoft and Infineon in the past years. And yeah, I'm really excited about this panel and looking forward to all the good arguments that are going to come ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Tobias. I'm the CEO at Hawk. We do we address the financial services. We provide software to find and fight financial crime, anti-money laundering, fraud, those kind of things. I'm sure we're going to be talking about this a little bit more. The way I use AI, apart from what we do in our product, is just simple, picture generation for presentations and ChatGPT-based stuff to, create content and, be faster in doing that, basically. Looking forward to this. Thanks.
So given limited time, I'm going to ask a question directed at one panelist, and if others really want to chime in afterwards, they can. So I'm going to start with Itxaso. Am I pronouncing Itxaso?
It's good, at some point.
Itxaso, are we in a bubble with AI right now? There's a lot of hype around AI. Is it a bubble? And if not, why not?
In my opinion, it's not a bubble, because my definition of a bubble is something that explodes and never comes back, right? And that means that what's going to stay is the underlying technology powering this hype, if you want to, will stay and will continue to develop, right? So that's why, for me, it's not a bubble, but rather we were going to see contractions and expansions, right, as we go. Then, if we think about the development of technology, I don't think I need to tell all of you that it's very difficult to keep pace with the development of this technology, even for myself, which is my daily job, right? So that's one. But one of the main things that I do with all the enterprises and customers that my team and myself work with on a daily basis is to tackle the question about the hype, is talk about use cases that impact the business and ROI and calculation of that ROI. Right? I have that conversation every day. Right? And one of the things that we did, because this was so important for customers, when I say customers, we work with from the Deutsche Banks of the world to the Spotifys of the world, right? So digital native customers to classic, big, important DAX 30 enterprises. And when it comes to ROI, one of the main things that we did is we conducted an analysis to understand, is this a hype or do we see already impact on the business? So you can see this analysis online, you can Google that. It's called The ROI of Gen AI, published less than a month ago. And it was a survey across 2,500 executives, right, across the globe. Most of them in the States and Europe, actually. And it was really interesting to see that 85+% of them saw ROI within the first 12 months. Right? So that's one point, which is important to understand. The second point is, with the pace of acceleration, we are also increasing the time to production. So more than 50% of the use cases, you can get to production quicker than before, within 3 to 6 months. Right? So to your question about hype, we are accelerating as technology is going forward. But our role, I think, for all of us is also understand and translate how these use cases can impact and the revenue that generates for us to dissipate the concerns that we see with the hype and the contractions that we might have seen or will see.
Question for both Heiko and for Phil. Will AI improve humans and augment humans, or will it replace humans? Either one of you could start.
You know, I think replacing humans maybe sounds a little bit harsh. I think definitely people who are maybe not the strongest in their jobs, you know, maybe they have not the most qualified jobs. There might be have issues in the future with AI, you know, taking over the role. But on the other side, I think most jobs will just, you know, or the people in their jobs just getting better, because AI should just help them to get better. They should help them to be more creative, do less mistakes, just improve the speed of their work. You know? I think especially, you know, coming from a creative space, I think AI can help definitely to fix the blank page problem we all know, sitting in front of a blank page and don't know how shall I start, you know? So an AI can be a very good, you know, tool here to be better and faster with doing your job.
Yeah, I agree with all that you've said. I think, I mean, in its core, AI is an automation technology, right? We're automating tasks that have previously required human intelligence, and humans are always working on technology that automates tasks. This is not new to the now what we call AI world. This was the case with machines on the fields that were sowing stuff out, and now you have 2 people doing the work of hundreds in the past, and cars replacing horses and all that. So I think certain jobs, there will be less demand for certain jobs that can then be performed by AI, so there will be a replacement in that sense. But I don't think it will have an overall negative impact on employment, because there's simply, even though you could think that it does, there simply is no example in history where that has been the case. I mean, we have more people in employment now than we've ever had, despite all the amazing automations we've already come up with, and I think it's going to be very similar with artificial intelligence.
I think I'm going to disagree slightly on some of the things. I think I first agree on the macro point. I don't think that we will have a macro problem like this. But certainly in the use cases that we've got, which is really identifying suspicious behavior, fraud, these kind of things, it's simply true that the machine learning or AI algorithms are much better in finding that fraud. There's no way the humans can do it as efficiently or effectively ever, really. And in those cases, there will be a replacement of the human by the machine for sure. We see this every day. As we, you know, replace legacy software with ours, we also replace sometimes many people with our technology. So unfortunately, I think in specific use cases, there is some truth to that.
Maybe, I mean, we're in customer service, right? So you would think, of course, well, if all the customer service is done by AI agents, then this will replace all the human contact center agents. Now, when you look at our customer base, which is very broad around the world, we don't see any examples of layoffs because of the use of the technology. And that is because every one of these enterprises is struggling with not having enough human agents. It's not that they're fully staffed and now the efficiency gains can be translated into cost savings through redundancies, but it's because they don't have enough agents, right? And you're filling a gap, essentially, that is there, right? So in that sense, we don't have an example yet for that actually happening.
You could describe that as agents tackling the long tail and then agents tackling the actual ones that you have to tackle, so I absolutely agree.
Switching topics for a second, Yasmin, tell us about ways that startups can or are acting irresponsibly with AI, particularly in the development of AI models, and how does one police them to make them act responsibly?
So one thing I really don't like the word policing because it takes the fun out of AI, and it seems like we're trying to like hover over developers and be like, hey, you can't do that. It's more of a question of what startups and companies generally like put on their radar as a first goal that they want to have. If the first goal is we want to make profit over everything, then it mostly happens that recklessness creeps in. What do I mean with recklessness? That mostly means that there's not enough assessment of what impact your AI system can have, mean it on users, mean it on society, mean it on other target groups. So in that case, startups specifically, and I think they understood this earlier, they become profitable and they have really, really, really good products if they assess their AI systems as early as possible, meaning they're looking at the impact it's going to have on the direct user. They're looking at use cases. They're making sure that the AI system that they're using are for specific use cases, and they're making sure that it's not malused for other use cases. So all of these aspects are points where startups can really focus more on, and that's what we at the Responsible Tech Hub actually do. We work directly with startups in Munich, where we go through impact assessments, where we offer them the help that they need, because most of the time startups don't have enough money to get consultants from the big firms. So what we do is we sit down with them and we assess their AI systems, but also their use cases. Because it's one thing to have an AI system that might be responsible in one use case, but it can be used for different use cases that might be irresponsible. And we see this often with systems like facial recognition, where in some aspects we use them for use cases of security, but then in other aspects we're using them for use cases that are not actually, responsible, if we can say it like that. It's the same thing with generative AI, where we, for example, use deepfakes to create personas in one use case, for example, in marketing, where it helps, but we also create personas, deepfake personas on, for example, deepfake porn. So these are aspects that startups really, really need to focus on, but not only startups, but also big companies. I know Google does this, I know Microsoft does this, I know all the bigger German tech companies are slowly but surely focusing on it, but there needs to be more. And the reason why there needs to be more is not only regulation, but the product becomes better. And I think this is something that more and more startups understand and will make them flourish at some point and more successful.
Tobias, sticking with that theme from what we were talking about with Yasmin, tell me a little bit about how bad actors can use AI to destroy trust. And what do companies like Hawk and others do to put trust back in an AI world?
Yeah, I mean, the way we see this is really an arms race, right? So there's the bad actors upping their game using AI, and it's almost the same on the good guys' side, with the problem being that the good guys seem to be a whole lot slower in doing all that. So we'll see where that's going to take us in the next few years. I think it was said already a little bit, impersonation is a problem, starting with impersonating voices or pictures as people get tricked into, sending money from their bank accounts to others in all kinds of romance scams or elderly abuse, those kind of things. We see a lot of that happening already today, and we see it just accelerating. I think the numbers are through the roof. Certain countries are reacting as they regulate financial institutions to make those institutions more liable when this happens. And as a result of that, those institutions would use technology like ours to basically up their game again, as I already said, to make sure that they fight back. So this is sort of the circle that I think is going on, and it's just going to accelerate over the next years for sure. I wouldn't know how to, stop it, at least right there. Yeah.
Maybe on this aspect, just really quick, when we talk about trust and we talk about bad actors, we also need to make sure that we understand that big companies also have a responsibility. So it's one aspect to say, okay, we have trust in specific companies, but if these companies are vehemently making sure that data is leaked, that, the data of the user is used for malpurposes, then obviously the users will also lose trust. So as long as we make sure that bigger companies are held responsible and accountable for basically making sure that their spaces and their platforms are safe, then trust obviously can be gained. But that's just a matter of time, and it's not only bad actors who are basically the force of us losing trust.
We're fortunate enough to have a big company on the panel right now, so let me ask a question. I'll try to stick with provocative type questions. How does a hyperscaler like GCP think about, what makes one AI infrastructure provider, one hyperscaler, sustainably better than another, so that you can create loyalty from your enterprise customers? Why should people not just switch between which one is the most cost effective?
Sure. I think it's a great question, and they're just great hyperscalers and companies up there, right? So that's not for me to judge. But to your question, I'll put myself in the shoes of the customer or enterprises, right? So if I simplify this a lot, in the AI tech stack, you have 3 layers, right? So infrastructure, models, and application. Right? I'm simplifying a lot. So one of the main things that I think makes a company very successful with customers, and then you can usually gain loyalty, but first serve them best, is to make make those layers integrated for someone who's using them, right? And make them as easy as possible. Not to have one layer somewhere, one layer in another place, and make it difficult to use. What I mean by that is, for example, if I talk about my company, say if I talk about Google, the infrastructure layer, we've been working there for the last 20 years. It's nothing new, with TPUs and different developments that we have, right? In this second layer, we have an enterprise platform called Vertex. You have all the models that you can imagine there, our own models, third-party models, open source models, right? And we continue to develop applications for people that don't code or code a little bit, right? So that's choice, and I think that's really, really important for customers. If they choose many different things, we will go with that, right? But I think, to my first point, if you start using a model, right, and you see the platform, and that platform can manage your infrastructure and can lead you directly to the next application, and you can connect that with your Gmail even, that whole chain is so powerful that normally customers and enterprises want to continue to work with you instead of managing different components of that AI tech stack.
Yasmin, Itxaso said that they have multiple models they run. Will there be one God model that runs them all? And if so, what does that imply for content creators, training models, IP for those models and protecting IP, et cetera?
I'm actually really happy you're asking this question because I haven't heard this discussion in Germany happening yet. So for those who are familiar with this aspect, in Silicon Valley, there's this huge debate on whether there's going to be a God model of AIs that's basically connected to everything in life, or whether we're heading towards multiple models in different sectors. So there's one aspect within the RTH, within our hub that we're working on, where we're saying, specifically on intellectual property on IP, it doesn't matter where we have a God model or not. The biggest issue for content creators right now is that their content is being stolen anyways. Their data is being used, specifically for artists, their art is being used by Gen AI already, so we actually need to talk about the fact that there needs to be some kind of compensation for that happening already. So whether we have a God model or not, this problem is still there. It's not going to change. The other thing that I think is really important is, and this is probably important for all sectors, we cannot have a monopolization of one AI system, simply because it does not, at least systematically, not work in each sector. For each sector, and I'm talking specifically on biases, for example, because this is the #1 discussion we're having when it comes to responsible AI. We want to make sure, obviously, that our tech is bias-free or as reduced of biases as possible. But this is not important in each sector. In some sectors, you actually want to have biases. The healthcare sector is, for example, a really, really good example, where we're saying, okay, we look at minorities, for example, black women in the US, who are mistreated all of the time. And we see this happening simply because the doctors are not taught that specific symptoms might look differently on different ethnicities. So if we use one God model, let's say it like that, or if we use one model that is basically trained on an average, these women fall out. That means we can't have the individualized treatment that we actually want for them. So in this case, we're actually saying in some aspects we want to have biases in these data sets. And this brings me back to like rounding it up on God models or having several different models. I personally don't think it's feasible, simply because sectors are so different from each other and we have different goals in different sectors that we want to focus on. But at the same time, I think the biggest issue here is trying to not monopolize in one area. And when it comes to IP rights, just to circle that back, we have to have this discussion now about how we compensate creators right now, whose data is already used to train multiple systems right now.
Well, talking about multiple models versus single models, what makes more sense? And as one of the best-known AI companies in the contact center space, is it more sensible to have one model or to orchestrate across multiple models?
So there's several aspects that come into this. One is around capabilities. And from that sense, you certainly want to have different models, because some models are better at, say, search. Others are better at creating human-like outputs. Others are better at creating images, etc. And of course, we talk about artificial intelligence here, but then what is that, right? I mean, there is classification, there is image generation, there is text generation, there's a vastly different array of capabilities. So in that sense, certainly different models for different things. And then, at least right now, there's also a huge cost difference in the inference. Yeah? So for those who are not familiar with it, you train a model and there's a cost for that. And then when you question the model, it's called inference and it's charged by tokens. And even in the OpenAI world, and I'm not so familiar with your pricing, but I assume it's very similar, there's sometimes a 1,000-fold difference in pricing per token or per million tokens, depending on the model, right? And sometimes, so you don't really want to use a very expensive model for a task that a much cheaper model could perform as well, right? So right now for us, it's all about model orchestration, where you might use a Gemini model to figure out what task is the customer wanting to accomplish, but then when you do the search, maybe you're using a text embedding 3 model from OpenAI, and then maybe you're using another model hosted on Amazon Bedrock for something else, right? So we certainly think that this multi-model world will continue to exist, not least likely because some customers are all in on Google, some others are all in on AWS, and some others are all in on Microsoft. So if there's only one model, who's going to own it, right? So I think we can, with near certainty, say that we will continue to see a multi-model world.
Maybe just to add one more thing here, and there's especially here in Europe, another topic, and that's GDPR, right? So what kind of model do you use? Something what is hosted in the US or something what is hosted in Europe? And what do those people do with the data you send to them? Do they use that again to train their model, or do you can keep it private? So there are many reasons why you should be careful by choosing the right models.
Actually, Heiko, Tobias, question for the two of you. As budding entrepreneurs, and Cognigy is much more mature, but still in the pre-IPO stage. Is AI more relevant for B2C application layer or B2B application layer? Either one.
Yeah, I think what we all see that all the software we are using at the moment getting more and more AI features. So I think everyone in the B2B world getting used to AI feature, and the consumer space is not there at the moment. But I'm sure with all the Gen AI possibilities, we will see that especially in the entertainment industry, by creating music with that, creating books, movies, and even games in the future will have a lot of AI in there. I just don't think that the consumer is recognizing that he's using AI. And for sure, there will be also pure AI B2C apps. I believe that will be a huge disruption, especially in the entertainment industry for AI.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a more indirect play all the way to the consumer. I think the initial impact is much greater on the B2B side.
I know we're just running out of time right now. I have to ask this panel one question, just to be, again, stick with making it a little controversial. Regardless of who wins the US election, one easy prediction is that the losing side, whichever side that is, will partially blame AI. Will they be right?
Should I just start? Funny thing is, actually AI has been used in political campaigning for a long time.
Europe as well?
Yeah, Europe as well, actually. So for those who are not familiar, Cambridge Analytica, if you don't know the case, have a look at it. It's worth the web search, I'm telling you. But regardless of that, AI is mainly used on social media platforms to either persuade voters to vote or to get them to basically use them for behavior predictions and make sure that people go out to vote. The first one to actually understand the power of social media was Dean Howard. That was 2003, I believe. He used a platform called meetup.org. I don't know if you know this platform, but he's basically cited in every single research paper that is on social media and voting. Obama was the first one to leverage big data. So Obama was actually the one who introduced the aspect of big data and statistical regressions and ultimately AI into campaigning systems. So we've had this already happen way before. In Europe, we actually saw this happening with Brexit. We know for a fact that Cambridge Analytica as a company itself doesn't exist anymore, but we know there are a lot of more companies who exist to do the same thing. So we can assume that a lot of other parties, be it in Europe or be it in other parts of the world, are dealing with the same issue. So I think if we're talking about the outcome of the US election, yes, AI will have an influence on that, but we're already dealing with this as well in Europe.
So essentially you're saying economically we're in great shape because of AI, politically we're doomed. With that,
I don't know if we're politically doomed. I just think we need more education and means of understanding how political campaigns are working and how AI is used for political campaigning so people can make an educated decision on who to vote for.
all right, join me in thanking this fantastic panel.